Hello everyone, welcome to another Reddit story. We all had a roommate you didn't like or was a weirdo, did weird or crazy things, or the roommate was completely rude to you. Today's video is about shitty roommates. Thank you so much for watching, and let's get straight into it. Story 1. About a month into living with SR, I started noticing a really bad smell in our room. I'd clean the room top to bottom, take out the trash, do all my laundry, would hint for him to do his laundry around the same time, but no matter what, the room always had a foul odor, just unexplainable grossness. It wasn't SR, he showered at least daily, if not more. I put up with it and switched rooms as soon as I could. A couple of months later, one of my buddies calls me and tells me he was morbidly curious about the smell and bugged SR about it until he caved and told him. SR had been saving his used condoms in a box under his bed as trophies. I mean, just what the fuck? Story 2. He brought crackhead prostitutes home and left them there while he went to work, came home to find all his electronics stolen, and tried to blame me for not doing something to stop them. Like, I'm just trying to work in my room. I'm not about to wrestle a tweaker with hooker strength. Story 3. Years ago, I had a roommate/good friend. I was always home after work about 30 minutes before him, so I'd shower immediately so he wouldn't have to wait for me. He was jealous I was home so early, so he tweaked his schedule so he would sometimes arrive home at the same time as me or a little early. If he was home early, he'd run the shower, then hang out and smoke pot and only jump in the shower when he heard me come home, resulting in me having to wait around in my dirty work duds. If he was home after me, a few times I'd exit the bathroom and he was standing there beside the door in his underwear, holding a towel and looking at me in a very salty manner. No longer friends. Story 4. My second place with a lot of roommates when I was 19. I went to Shambhala and didn't have a lock on my door. I came back and one of the girls, who was much larger in width and height, had decided to try on all of my clothes and throw them across the house. They were all stretched and damaged, and she showed no remorse. The house voted to kick her out, and on her way out, she flushed her weave, causing our septic tank to explode. Insane. Story 5. When I lived with a roommate in college, someone got too high and ate all the tops off an 8-pack of muffins. That someone was me, and I was the shitty roommate that night. Story 6. Said he was trying to get better at mixing drinks and needed someone to give feedback, too sweet, bitter, etc. Anything that was a dark, non-see-through drink, he was spiking. The only thing was, he wasn't putting enough in to knock me out. Had a friend pick me up when I knew I was hallucinating and asked him to take me to the hospital and took a drug test. Called up the landlord and told him what my roommate had been doing. He made sure his stuff was gone within 48 hours and my roommate was arrested. I was apparently the guinea pig for his drug concoctions. Thankfully, it never got to anyone else, and because I'm apparently very drug resistant. I do have to say, he did make a very good 7 and 7. Story 7. Freshman roommate, 4 of us in a quad room. Darren. He bummed smokes constantly. Would be a huge dick if you asked him for one, really make you earn it. Super cheap about any shared bills. Generally not fun to be around. The sad thing is, he clearly wanted to have friends, but just could not piece it together that required a basic level of niceness. Story 8. Roomed with a neighbor with 2 other people. One was a personal trainer, the other a student. They were angels. The neighbor turned out not to be. He had issues with his GF, and she basically moved in for free. Would leave the appliances on and drove our monthly bills up like crazy. He refused to make her pay after we had already established that she would and him agreeing. I ended up moving out, told them I'd pay for my rent but not utilities since I was not using them anymore. He threatened to keep my W-2 if I didn't pay for utilities. I ended up paying so I could get my documents back. Old roommates later told me they tried to kick the GF out and she broke in and threatened to end herself if she had to leave. Cops were called. Freshman year of college in the dorms. He wasn't a bad person, but he did some things that left me in a shitty way. One story, I guess milk wasn't popular where he was from. He was an international student, so he bought a plastic half-gallon to try it. Took a couple sips and decided he didn't like it, screwed the lid back on, and put it in a small trash can we had in the corner. I assumed it was an empty carton. We didn't use the trash much, and it just sat there in LA in September with no AC. In the middle of the night one night, it exploded and sent spoiled milk flying all across my side of the room. I slept through it and woke in the morning to the smell and the curdled milk cemented all over my bed, clothes, desk, ceiling. I was confused as shit, but put it together after a few minutes. Had a sore throat and felt really crappy all day. Went to the nurse, and it turns out bacteria from the milk got into my lungs and I had pneumonia. Was bedridden for about a week. Fun start to college. Well, I bought Dave's Killer Bread and Bounty paper towels, which he interpreted as a subliminal message to him that I think he is a bully because they both have burly men on them, and he confronted me telling me that if I had a problem with him, I better just tell him to his face like a man. This lecture lasted about 10 minutes, and he was really aggressive about it. I didn't have a problem with him until that point, but then a lot of his strange behaviors started clicking in place, and I realized that dude was nuts. My freshman year roommate would have his GF from home stay with us for weeks at a time, and because of the way the visitor passes worked, she could come and go for 3 days at a time, and then she would have to stay inside for 4 days. Later in the semester, they broke up and went crazy, punched a window and smeared a bunch of blood on the walls, and took a knife and locked himself in a room with a random girl who lived in our building, and I had to convince him to let her go, and then I convinced him that he should leave the knife when he decided he wanted to go outside. He was stopped by campus police in the lobby because someone had called about the blood in the hallways. I had trouble sleeping one night as I had my second ever panic attack, the full-on hyperventilating, face-tingling, and feeling like I was going to die type. My roommate, who worked nights, was home and noticed me shaking as I tried to calm myself with a glass of water with drops of rescue remedy. That didn't really help. He asked if I was okay, and after admitting my struggle, he told me he'd like to show me something that helped him with his own anxiety, claiming it cured him and it would help put things into perspective. I said okay and followed him to his bedroom where he shut the door and told me to just watch. He pulled up a video on his computer of a soldier being decapitated. I was beyond horrified as I covered my eyes and asked why the F would he show me something like that as he smiled and said to just give it time. It made my panic so much worse, especially having to share the apartment alone with him until I moved out. It became an intrusive thought and nightmare for months afterwards.
Story 13. He was a close friend who convinced me to move 30 miles from my mother's house to an apt. It was closer to both of our jobs, his in engineer and mine in video production. He made 3 times what I did. He would take the big room and pay more of the rent so it was more doable on my pay. We shared the bills as much as possible. We split food and cooked a couple times a week so we had leftovers for work. 6 months in, I met a girl and began to date her pretty heavily. Even as a close friend, his questions got very intrusive, wanting to know if we had sex. This was my first girlfriend, and I was a 23-year-old virgin. I had no clue what I was doing. I kinda blew it off. One day after lunch, I called him to see if we were cooking dinner that night. No answer. I texted 2 times, no answer. I assumed he was busy at work. So after work, I went home and made myself dinner and started watching TV. He comes in 2 hours later than he normally would, but that's none of my business. I said, hey, he said, hey, and sat down. He turns off the TV and says, when you called me earlier, I was in a psychiatrist's office. I said, okay, are you good? Then he proceeded to tell me he was in love with me and wanted to know if I was going to have sex with my girlfriend. I calmly and with the most adult tone said I understand he has feelings, but I did not feel that way about him. He sat quietly and then said, what are we going to do about this? I told him I was willing to act like it didn't happen. He went to his room and I never saw him again. The next day when I got home from work, his stuff was gone. I was left alone to pay more rent than I got paid all month long. I had to go to my landlord, who happened to be a very strict religious woman. I told her the story and she aggressively clutched her pearls. She got me in a smaller apt and cut my rent so I could afford it. I stayed there for 5 years. I learned one very important lesson. Live alone. Do not get a roommate. And Jason Green, if you are out there, I wish you the best. And you should know I in fact did have lots of sex with my girlfriend. That landlord is kind for helping him out getting an affordable place. Story 14. Roommate decides to let his friend move in without asking us. Friend lets GF move in too. She is unemployed and he is a musician, i.e. also pretty much unemployed. They camp out on the couch watching TV all day and eat other people's food. Roommate figures we, me and other roommate, have no right to complain because they sleep in his room at night. No extra money contributed for extra water or electricity consumed. No idea if they ever gave him a cent, but that wasn't my problem. We kicked all 3 of them out. Lease and all utilities were exclusively in my name, and got a new roommate. Old roommate says we kicked him out just so new guy would have a place. Absolutely never showed an ounce of awareness. Same roommate also had asked me to change the phone number, which was also in my name. This was 30 plus years ago, because psycho on and off GF is currently extra psycho, and they are done for good this time. Then gives her the number when they get back together again. Sometime after we kicked him out, he got put in jail for stalking her. Turns out they were both psycho. Wow, dodged a bullet there. Story 15. Would routinely set off the smoke alarm cooking chicken fingers at 3 a.m., blackout drunk. Would eat all of the food and not replace. Would take weed and leave IOUs. Was just a piece of shit. Fuck roommates and fuck you, Dan. Story 16. Dude got into a fight with his girlfriend who also lived with us because she picked up an extra shift at work. He decided this was reasonable cause to throw her things in the backyard and light them on fire. If that wasn't bad enough, he didn't bother to move the pile of belongings away from the house before igniting them, so the back of the house caught fire as well. Thankfully, the fire department was nearby, and they managed to put it out before the whole place burned down, but it was a long night. Also, a couple of days later, his dad frantically showed up at the house, grabbed the guy's computer, and ran off, having apparently said something to another roommate about not wanting the cops to get it. We can only speculate on what the fuck that was about. Please tell me she broke up with him.
Story 17. My first roommate was a buddy from high school. He would come home from work, cook like 6 boxes of mac and cheese, and sit in front of his computer, which was in the living room, and eat till he couldn't anymore. Every night. A week or so in, mentioned to him the place was smelling bad. I was cleaning, but it still smelled. And then I started looking for a pot to cook with, and we had none left. Found out he just used different pots every night, and when he was done eating as much as he could, he put them hidden under his desk, which he never let me near. There was mold growing under there. I only lived there for maybe 2 weeks before I was out. He was pissed because his name was on the rental agreement, not mine. He had the place before I moved in, so he acted like I was the asshole for leaving. Never talked to the guy again. Story 18. I lived with a guy, I don't know his real name, we just knew him as Lucky. He was always bringing home randoms to party after nights out when I was working night shift, which was problem because, a Monday morning house party where you invite 30 strangers you met clubbing is perfectly normal behavior. But the real story came on a night I wasn't working. Now, unbeknownst to me, Lucky had lost his keys. That will be important later. I didn't go out with Lucky that night. I was tired, introverted, and just wanted a night in. I went to bed around 11, 12-ish. I, as any perfectly normal person does, locked the house up before I turned unconscious. I was awoken in the morning to Lucky sitting on top of me, being held back by our other roommate, a gym rat named Steve. Nice fella. Anyway, Lucky was brandishing a broken bottle he was trying to put on my throat. He had every intention of killing me because I locked the door and he had been embarrassed when his friends left after he couldn't get in. Went straight to cops in the morning. Lucky went on the run and never showed back to the house again. Last I heard, he was deported back to India. What a psycho. This could have turned into a true crime episode, but luckily his other roommate was there to save him. Story 19. Fresh out the army, maybe a year, and I really didn't have a home. Stayed with another veteran, we split the rent and another veteran roommate bought groceries. But we had to take him because he couldn't drive, DWI, blow machine in his car. So they would party a lot. Sometimes I would come to the apartment and see total strangers there. I owned a lot of guns, and the leaseholder would post himself on IG and FB holding them, saying he just purchased them. He would show them off to these complete strangers. It was crazy. Long story short, I count not take it any longer. I left, took all my possessions, and split. 2 days later, they got broke into, and where did the robbers go looking for? The guns in the leaseholder's room. Good thing he followed his guts and left with his stuff before the thieves came. They were probably tipped off by the leaseholder or someone of the party. Story 20. My shitty roommate story is literally shitty. When I was in college, I shared a split-level apartment with 2 other women. One of them moved out after a year, but the other roommate and I decided to stay for another year searching for another roommate. The one we found seemed pretty cool. She was our age, early 20s, and was a single mother to a 6-year-old boy. Since the apartment was split level, there were 2 bathrooms, one on each level. The downstairs bathroom was basically mine. I showered in it and had my stuff in there and got ready in the morning. The other roommates usually only used it when they were downstairs, and guests would use it. It was also the boys' bathroom. For some reason, he had a habit of finger painting on the walls. I worked at a popular theme park at that time, so I often worked the late shifts, not getting home until 2 in the morning. I'd get home and find poop smeared all over the wall. That was the last thing I wanted to clean up at 2 in the morning. So I would always leave a note to my roommate or send her an email. This was right before text messages became a thing, so she would always clean it up first thing in the morning. Then I'd come home late from work, same thing. Poop finger painted on the bathroom wall. Story 21. I have plenty of my own to tell, but the worst story I heard was a work friend who told me of a time his roommate came home with roadkill because they wanted to make art out of the animal's skeleton. So they decided to boil the carcass over the course of 8 hours to dissolve the animal, and it just made the house absolutely reek something unholy for weeks. Absolute insanity. That's insane, just casually bringing a dead animal home and boil it. Story 22. So many stories. But this one fucking guy made fish for dinner Friday night. Stinks up the entire house. We had the rule that you either put dishes in the dishwasher and it gets turned on when needed, or you clean them yourself. Leaves fish-covered dishes in the sink. Doesn't clean the dishes, takes off for a week without telling anyone he was going anywhere. Like straight up disappears. He comes home furious that his dishes are still in the sink, like he expected one of us to clean his fishy dishes. Another time, the same guy, he took off again not telling us he was going anywhere. Disappears for 2 weeks this time. Didn't lock the house, comes home and is pissed that the house wasn't spotless, particularly the bathroom for some reason. He went on a cruise and then expected us, the other roommates, to clean the entire house. We cleaned the house, don't get that wrong, but he was pissed because the house wasn't clean, like he expected a royal welcome home. I flipped on him. He never took the garbage out, never took the garbage or recycling to the road for pickup, never shoveled snow, would try to delegate cleaning tasks where he took the quickest and easiest jobs, literally didn't know how to use the dishwasher. He put a bowl upside down on a plate and put that in the dishwasher. He left the house unlocked all the time with the windows open, curtains open, TV and lights on. We had an issue with the front door not latching properly, so you either had to make sure it closed all the way or deadbolted it to keep it closed. Well, he didn't do that one Saturday morning, where he took off again for only a few days this time in the middle of winter, and when I woke up hours later, I had to shovel snow out of the house. He called the fucking cops on us because we had a small party outside on the deck on a Saturday night, and he didn't want to confront us about being loud. And apparently that wasn't the first time he had called the cops on us for a noise complaint. He admitted to it while the cops were there. It was just a group of like 10 people, hardly a party, and we didn't even have music playing. We were sitting around the fire pit, having beers, chatting, and cooking food on the BBQ. I'm going to stop there. I'm getting too worked up. But there are so many more stories about this jackass, and even more stories about my next roommate. Fuck these 2 roommates in particular. Ruined roommates forever for me. Fucking bullshit you go through in your 20s. If you liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe. See you on the next video.